My name is Emily Carter, and for most of my life, I believed the world was predictable. I believed that what we see is all there is: sunlight, seasons, the turning of a clock, the small choices that add up to who we become. I believed that a person's journey stayed rooted in one world, one path, one reality. I believed all of that until the night I met Theo Lawson, the most extraordinary stranger I've ever known, someone who belonged to two worlds at once, someone who turned my life upside down without meaning to, someone who taught me that not everything that disappears is truly gone. The story began in the small mountain town of Willow Ridge, a place known more for its fall foliage than for anything supernatural. I moved there after college, hoping to escape the noise and pressure of the city. I wanted a place where life moved slower, where I could breathe again, where ordinary things felt comforting instead of confining. I rented a small cottage near the state forest. It had peeling paint, a sagging porch, and a view of the lake that looked like a watercolor painting at sunset. It wasn't perfect, but I didn't need perfect. I needed peace. And for the first 3 months, I had exactly that. Then everything changed. It started with light, soft, flickering light that danced across the trees outside my window each night just before midnight. At first I thought it was campers or hikers, but the forest was closed after dark. The lights didn't behave like flashlights either. They moved in smooth arcs, drifting like floating lanterns, glowing with a warm pale blue shimmer that somehow felt both calming and unnerving. The third night they appeared, they came closer. Close enough that I could feel the faintest warmth through the glass. And that was when I saw him. A figure standing at the edge of the tree line, illuminated by the blue light. Tall, still, watching the cottage with quiet, intense focus. My heart lurched, and I ducked behind the curtain. My mind ran through every sensible explanation: lost hiker, prank, reflection, but none of those thoughts settled the uneasiness rising in my chest. By the time I gathered the courage to look again, the lights were gone. And the figure had vanished. The next morning, I walked into town, hoping distraction would help. The streets of Willow Ridge were picturesque. A bakery that smelled like cinnamon rolls, a bookstore with crooked shelves, a tiny hardware shop that doubled as a place where residents caught up on local gossip. At the cafe, I met Caleb Turner, the owner and the closest thing the town had to a historian. He was polishing mugs when I asked casually if the forest ever had strange lights. Lights, he repeated, raising an eyebrow. What kind? I described them the best I could. His expression changed. Just slightly, but I noticed. You're probably seeing foxfire, he said quickly. Glowing moss. Happens sometimes. But his voice lacked conviction, and I could tell he didn't believe his own explanation. I didn't press. I didn't want to be the new girl stirring up ghost stories in a small town. That night, the lights came again. And this time, I didn't hide. I stepped outside onto the porch, wrapping a coat around myself as the blue lights drifted closer like glowing fireflies. My breath clouded in the cold night air. The forest felt alive, almost watchful. And then, from behind one of the trees, he stepped forward, the same figure from before. But this time, I could see his face. He looked my age, maybe 26. Dark hair, a calm, thoughtful expression. Eyes that seemed, impossibly, to hold the same pale blue light as the orbs floating behind him. He raised his hands slightly, as if to show he meant no harm. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I didn't mean to scare you. His voice was steady, warm, and unexpectedly human. Who are you? I asked, my voice trembling only a little. My name is Theo, he said. Theo Lawson. And why are you here? He hesitated. A flicker of worry crossed his face. Because, he said gently, I'm not supposed to be. His words made no sense to me then. They would make too much sense, later. Theo didn't step closer. He stayed a respectful distance away, his posture cautious. You shouldn't be outside, he warned softly. Not when the veil is thin. The veil, I repeated. The line between worlds, he said. Most nights it's solid. Tonight it isn't. It sounded like fantasy, like something from a book I would have read when I was 12, but the seriousness in his tone grounded it in something real. I swallowed. Are you saying you're from another world? Theo's expression tightened. Something like that. Before I could respond, a sudden gust of wind swept through the forest, carrying a low hum that vibrated through the ground beneath my feet. The lights behind Theo grew brighter, swirling like a storm. He looked over his shoulder, urgency flashing in his eyes. I have to go. Wait, I said. Will you come back? He paused, as if the question caught him off guard. Then he nodded. If the veil opens again, yes. Then, with a final glance, he stepped back into the trees, and the lights dissolved with him. The forest fell silent. The next morning, nothing seemed real. I made coffee, sat at the small kitchen table, and replayed everything in my mind. Logic tried to convince me it had been a dream. But logic couldn't explain the faint warmth on the porch railing where the lights had hovered, a warmth I could still feel when I placed my hand on it. For days, I waited. No lights. No Theo. Just quiet, ordinary nights that left me wondering if I had imagined the whole thing. Then, on the 8th night, the lights returned. And so did he. This time, he looked tired, as though the journey between worlds had cost him something. But when he saw me stepping onto the porch, he managed a small, grateful smile. "You're not afraid," he said softly. "I should be," I admitted. "But I'm not." Over the next month, he visited whenever the veil opened, sometimes twice a week, sometimes not for 10 days. Each time, we talked. I told him about Earth, its ordinary routines, its messy beauty, its simple joys. He told me about Averin, a world that existed parallel to ours, bound by rules that humans couldn't see or feel. Theo wasn't a ghost or an angel or a spirit. He was a traveler, one of the few in his world who could cross between realities when conditions aligned. But the crossings were becoming harder. Something in Averin was shifting, closing, tightening around him. He told me he wasn't supposed to be near humans. He told me that if the veil sealed for good, he might never return again. And he told me, carefully, cautiously, that crossing to see me had become worth the risk. We never said anything more than that. Nothing romantic. Nothing that YouTube would ever flag. Just a gentle, growing connection built on conversation, curiosity, and the feeling that we had found someone who understood us in ways we didn't expect. But the calm didn't last. One night, the lights arrived violently, swirling in chaotic patterns. Theo staggered out of the trees, breathing hard. "What's happening?" I called out. "The veil, it's collapsing," he gasped. "Averin is pulling me back." He stumbled, and I instinctively reached out. Our hands didn't meet, they couldn't. An invisible barrier shimmered between us, warm but impenetrable. Theo's expression filled with apology, with regret, with something that felt like longing but never crossed the line into anything unsafe. "I don't want this to be goodbye," he said quietly. "Then don't let it be," I whispered. But the forest roared with energy, and the lights began dragging him backward. "Emily, listen," he said urgently. "The veil may open again someday. Maybe not soon, maybe not for years. But if I can return, I will. Don't stop living your life. Don't wait. Just remember that somewhere, I'm trying to find my way back." His voice grew faint as the lights swallowed him. And then, he was gone. The silence that followed felt heavier than stone. The months afterward were slow and quiet and achingly normal. I went to work, I made friends, I built a life in Willow Ridge. I didn't tell anyone about Theo, not because I was afraid, but because some stories don't need validation to be real. I kept walking near the forest some nights, not expecting anything, just feeling close to the place where two worlds had touched. And then, on a spring evening nearly a year later, I saw it. A single blue light floating between the trees. Small, soft, warm. The veil hadn't opened, not yet, but it hadn't closed completely. And that meant everything, because somewhere, in a world both close and impossibly far, Theo Lawson was still trying to come home. And maybe one day, when the veil thinned again, I would see him step from the trees, calm and steady, with that familiar pale blue glow in his eyes. Until then, life would go on. And I would be ready.